Hello there, and welcome to the Untitled Film Podcast with Callum and Johnny. I am, as ever, Johnny.
And I am also Johnny.
Oh, are you now?
Yes, we've decided that it's a two Johnny's podcast.
Which I have done in the past, but about a different subject matter.
Well, maybe one day that subject matter will come back up. I know that you're a fan of that subject matter. How cagey do you want us to be about that?
Oh, I don't care.
Because you were going to do an F1 podcast and you had a couple of episodes, and then your friend who did it, didn't he move away? Or
moved to Australia,
he moved
yes.
to Australia.
So, if you're out there, Johnny, one day we'll record another episode of our fantastic Formula One podcast. But anyway, that is actually Callum over there.
It is Callum. And
I am Johnny.
One of the few larks that we have on this rambunctious, fun podcast for fun and funniness.
And you know, so what we do when we record a podcast is we do a kind of like 1 minute test before, where we go back and listen to the audio. As some of you who listened to the first podcast might have noticed that it was a bit quiet. So something we do now to make sure that is okay.
It's one of the few notes we had on episode 1.
Yeah.
Too quiet.
So because of that, when we did that, I caught Callum out on purpose by saying, I'm Callum. And Callum evidently decided to steal that from me for the new ones.
I call that vengeance.
Except you didn't trick me. Well, I think I almost tricked you.
You did, yeah.
So
I also know better than to try and do some vengeance on Johnny, because on a small tangent, and it's very funny, when we went to India, we went on holiday to India several years ago, and I took a picture of him with at a restaurant where there were sort of dancers, and they brought him up to dance, and I made a coy comment. I said, Johnny has found himself a wife. The entire rest of that holiday, he trolled me by taking pictures of me. So I should know better by now.
You can't outfox a fox, that's all I'm saying.
Yes, it's very true.
But yeah, on to the next part. So
this is the magic.
This is the magic.
The magic is beginning now.
Also, the magic is Untitled Podcast. Have we thought of a better name yet?
I certainly haven't. No.
Well,
what about yourself?
I haven't either. So, dear listeners, the pledge goes out as it does every week.
Please
if you can think of a better name,
help it. Save us from ourselves.
Go with it. So yeah, that is that one. So on from there, onwards and upwards. So shall we go into the news?
Yes, I think the news is something we should go into. Do you want to start us off today?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to. So a couple of new trailers out this week are my two pieces of news. One of which we'll go through now. So there's a new trailer for a film called Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
Excuse me?
Yes, you do not adjust your sets, listeners. It is called Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. And it is a horror movie about Winnie the Pooh. So Christopher Robin evidently had abandoned Winnie the Pooh in the woods and his friends in the woods. And he, I think, feels guilty about it. And I don't know how many years, maybe 15, 20 years later, as a young adult, decided to go and find them in the woods. And they've gone feral.
Oh my God.
And it's, I don't quite understand it. The trailer's somewhat strange in that the Winnie the Pooh and the piglet and things look like I don't know, what people in like a heist movie would do, like wearing a Winnie the Pooh mask or wearing a piglet mask.
Is that possibly to get around copyright laws?
I think partially yes, but I also think budgetary yes, because it doesn't look the highest of budget movies. It looks like a classic $1 million horror movie kind of thing. But also, and I think with it, I suspect the stories now must be in public domain.
Yes, they must be.
But obviously, I suppose Disney has a likeness
rights for the specific drawings.
Yeah, But also, I can't tell if it's meant to be like a bit of if there's going to be some twist and it's meant to be, well, obviously it's a parody, but if it's meant to be that they aren't actually a pig and a bear, or if they are meant to be a pig and a bear, or if they're meant to be, I can't really tell from the trailer, so that looks like an interesting one to watch.
Is it a real trailer for a real movie that's actually coming out?
Yeah, this was on Empire.
Oh my God.
Because I thought that at first, and I thought...
Because there was that guy, Adi Shankar, who's the producer of Dread, who used to do these unlicensed films, like The Punisher does his laundry, and he'd get Thomas Jane, who played The Punisher in 2004, to play the character who they couldn't legally call the Punisher, but he wore a shirt with a skull on it. And he would make several of these movies where they would simply sidestep all the legal bits to make fun movies. And that's what made his name before he went on to produce films like Dredd and other real movies.
Yep.
But he made his name, so I was thinking it could have been that, but it sounds like it's a proper, actual, genuine bona fide movie.
If I'd have just found it on YouTube, I would have assumed it's that. Or you remember when they did like the dark version of Dora the Explorer, or the dark version of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which they then seem to make into a TV series, which is slightly beyond parody, but you know, they people have done these things. Dark Fraser, that's one I've seen recently, which
it's
I
very
quite
funny.
enjoyed.
I've seen that one too.
But no, it seems to be a real thing.
Wow.
So
I'm not sure if I can top that, but I'll give it a try. The Telluride Film Festival is kicking off. I believe that's in one of the big film festivals in America. It's often where the first Oscar nomination hopefuls come and go. And reviews have just come out for The Empire of Light, which, dear listeners, if you don't know us, we live in Kent and we're about a stone's throw away from Margate, where the film was shot. And we went there several times and passed the exterior set of the cinema that the film is set around, the titular Empire. And we would see fake film titles, not real film titles, but fake listings like The Blues Brothers, Gregory's Girl, The Long Good Friday. And it was really fun to see Margate get turned into a film set. And the reviews have been very kind, especially for Olivia Colman. And people are really saying that this is going to be Olivia Colman. I think it's her third Oscar nomination, or it will be if she gets nominated. But they're saying it sounds like a pretty good certainty that she's going to get an Oscar nomination.
Excellent, because she won for The Favourite, I believe, didn't she?
She did.
So she's an Oscar winner. Which
yes.
is even better. But yeah,
and getting a third nomination puts you up in the ranks of like the bestest of the best of the best of the best.
I mean, I was very excited about it as someone who used to go to the cinema that it's based at as a child, as you have been as well. We've been and seen movies there together, including the first Terminator movie, the first Transformers movie.
Yes, I remember that.
Which, that's an interesting one. Was
the Simpsons movie.
Maybe?
I think that was the last year, because Death Sentence was the last film they played, the Kevin Bacon film, and there were articles saying it's a death sentence for the Margate cinema. You know, they do those hacky journalism.
And so that was something that kind of close to our heart. They, unfortunately, as with often happens, a big World of Cine or similar, it wasn't actually a World of Cine, but opened down the road, and I think killed it off. And they were interesting screens, because they were these giant screens that I think back in their day used to have. We still had the organs that came out for silent movies that were still built in them and stuff. And the seats were like sitting on one giant spring that you would like balance yourself on.
They were incredibly uncomfortable.
They were, but it was cute and I liked it, and they were cheap as well. I think it was like $3.50 or something to go and see a movie.
It was very cool. It was nice to see films there.
And it was nice to see that back. And that whole area, that whole front's very iconic, kind of as a British seaside mainstay. So no, it does look interesting. And also my boy Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross are doing the soundtrack again, who are probably my favouriteest soundtrack artists. So yeah,
it's very exciting
news.
I'm very much looking forward to the film.
For sure. Speaking of films that I'm looking forward to, another trailer dropped this week, the full-length trailer for the Weird Al Yankovic movie called Weird.
Yes, I've seen that.
Yeah, and it's looking good. I wasn't quite sure how autobiographical it was going to be from the first teaser trailer that came out a while back. Mm-hmm. For those who don't know, Daniel Radcliffe is playing Weird Al Yankovic. It's also got Bill Hader and another big cast of comedians in it. It looks good fun. And it's one of those movies that it looks to be one of those movies that kind of closely is the wrong word, kind of loosely follows the course of someone's life and career, but takes somewhat artistic license.
Seems to be very artistic liberties.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of there was about the time that Trump became president, I think, that Johnny Depp played him in a movie called The Art of the Deal that was for funnyordie.com.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then there was also, so there was that was that kind of thing. And then there was, what was the other one recently that kind of followed the same kind of track. The one about I've forgotten his name now, which is bad, which is why I was going over my head. But the guy that formed National Lampoon.
Journalism here.
Yeah, quality journalism. The guy that formed National Lampoon.
Okay, I can't say I know his name, to be honest.
Well, that makes two of us. But they made it. Bill Hader played him, and it was felt very much the same kind of vibe.
Cut here.
Yeah, we'll leave this in because I'm editing it and I can't be bothered. But no, it's top tier journalism. But yeah, so anyway, there was this thing. Bill Hader played him, and it had quite a big host of comedy people in. But it was definitely you had the outline of the person's life, but very kind of OTT comic around it, and it feels like it's in that kind of vein. And it's going to be on the Roku channel. It's going to be its main release. So they're
clearly aiming to try and get into that sort of original content game.
Yeah, they seem to. Their kind of way to kickstart that seemed to be to buy up everything from a failed service in the States that existed for about 3 months, had hundreds of billions of dollars spent.
That was a big
content.
mess.
It was. And yeah, they bought a lot of that for pennies, I suspect, on the dollar, or cents on the dollar. And yeah.
Fun
indeed. And yourself?
Well, my second piece, it's not news so much as it's a new release, a TV show that I've been enjoying quite a lot. It's on Freevee, which is one of those free apps that you get on Amazon Prime, and you don't opt into them. They just happen to be there on Amazon Prime, whether you like it or not. And it's a new TV show created by Greg Garcia, the creator of My Name is Earl and Raising Hope. And it's a new show called Sprung, about a bunch of convicts who were non-violent offenders, and they're released from prison because of the oncoming COVID pandemic. And because they're non-violent and they're worried about prisons being overcrowded, they release them. And the main guy is played by Garrett Dillahunt, who people will know, fans of Raising Hope, will know he played the wacky dad in Raising Hope. And he gets bed and board at the house of Martha Plimpton, who also was in Raising Hope. And it's another one of Greg Garcia's wacky hillbillies, kind of lower class people, but with hearts of gold. And he does a very good line in this. This is kind of his bread and butter of humanizing and sympathizing with characters who are usually the butt of the joke in other sitcoms, like Raising Hope and My Name is Earl is about these kind of what would be charitably called trailer trash or white trash, and giving them sort of like a little bit of heart. And I'm really enjoying it. They sort of become these Robin Hood figures. They're only allowed to stay in the house of Martha Plimpton if they commit crimes. But they decide that I'm not going back to prison. So if I'm going to do crimes, I'm only going to rip off people who are really bad, and I'm going to give a little bit of that money that we rip off back to the people who deserve it, especially who are suffering because of the COVID pandemic.
So slightly Robin Hood-esque.
Yeah, and it's good fun. It's really good fun, and Garrett Dillahunt and Martha Plimpton are two of America's best character actors. They clearly work well with Greg Garcia. So it's a good match, and I think the Freevee channel allows him to go a little bit more R-rated with the content, and he's not restrained by ABC, NBC sort of networks or Fox networks. Kind of, it must be PG and nothing else, and it's good fun. I recommend it highly.
Excellent. And yeah, I think that brings us quite neatly onto our 2 films of the week, actually. And speaking of hillbilly trash, what is our old movie of the week?
Our old film is Con Air.
The Jerry Bruckheimer, although he obviously didn't direct it, but produced classic, in inverted commas, from 1996, I want to say?
No, it's 97.
Is it? Wow.
Well, there you go.
Well, there you go. And what is our new movie of the week?
We are pairing it with Top Gun Maverick, which we understand, yes, is a little bit older. It's been out for a few months, and I believe it has its home release now.
It does indeed. It's just coming to home release, hence the reason we chose it, although we did see it in the Cineplex. In your case, 3 times.
I did see it 3 times, although I don't want to kind of pretend to be some Top Gun Maverick obsessed weirdo. It just happened to be that when it came out in June, I saw it as a new movie. Then I went to see my family who live up north in Durham, and they had up to north, and they had a foreign language student, and he wanted to go see a movie, and it was either that or Jurassic World. And I said, well, a film that I know can be enjoyed without having the best grasp on the English language.
Jurassic World, a movie that is, from what I hear, impossible to enjoy.
Exactly. I thought, well, I might as well enjoy myself because the movie is, spoilers, good.
And that's the end of our podcast. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Yeah. See you next week. But it is good, and I knew that he could enjoy it because all the dialogue that there is high emotion, very few syllables. I think other than the word Maverick, which Maverick has 3 syllables. I had to check myself there. Pretty much all the dialogue is, you can't do that. Yes, I can. No, you can't. So I said, this is perfect for someone whose second language, or maybe even third or fourth language, is English.
So it's basically the Sun of movies.
Yeah.
If you don't know, the Sun newspaper was originally designed to, I think, not have words that have more than 2 syllables. And I don't know if that still rings true today, but when it first went on the scene, it was meant to be easy and accessible.
And should I take a stab at doing the synopsis?
Go for it.
Okay, well, luckily I am cheating a bit because I have IMDb open. So after...
Wait. I know what movies it's in. I know what movie. I loved you in. I loved you in. I loved you in. IMDb.
So after more than 30 years of service as one of the Navy's top aviators, Pete Mitchell, Maverick, is where he belongs, pushing the envelope as a courageous test pilot and dodging the advancement in rank. This is a terrible synopsis. I shouldn't have gone with IMDb.
Yeah, why didn't you just make your own synopsis?
Just make my own synopsis. So
Man playing good. Enemy bad.
After 30 years, the military brass is trying to ground Maverick, but he's been given one more chance because of Iceman, who those who don't know, an original Top Gun, played by Val Kilmer, to train some new recruits for a big top mission. Unbeknownst to him, one of those recruits is the son of Pete Mitchell, or Maverick's old best buddy, Goose. The son has his own call sign, Rooster, and he still harbours a lot of resentment towards Maverick. And there's going to be a lot of trying to forgive himself along the way while teaching these young whippersnappers how to do this top mission.
Exactly, yeah. That's a pretty good synopsis, I think, without giving too much away.
And without trusting IMDb ever again.
Yes, very true. Luckily, it isn't a film where you need to have... So the first week in our podcast, those of you that listened, we reviewed the movie Nope, which is a film that's almost impossible to review without giving more than the trailers away. This is a film that I feel, if you've seen the original film, it is impossible to ruin.
To spoil, really.
Unless you really just lay out the last 10 minutes of the movie. So it's quite an easy one this week. So that's good at least.
It is very good.
Absolutely. So, what did I think of it?
Yes, what did you think of it?
What did you
think of it? For someone who's only seen it once, loser, what did you think about it?
I thought it was enjoyable. I think enjoyable is the word. It's almost a bit beyond review in that it's one of those films that it gets all the things it needs to get right. The action's engaging. It's pretty well shot, to be fair, for the most part.
Very pretty in some places.
A lot of sunsets, a lot of magic hour shots.
Yes.
A lot of jets looking cool. Obviously, the big thing with this film, and it partially is true for the original as well, is that they actually have the people in the planes, admittedly not flying them in the most cases, apart from there's a couple with Tom where I think he was flying bits and pieces, but for the most part not flying them, but actually have them acting in the planes while they were doing stuff, which is in the original as well, although it's to a far greater degree in this. And it looks amazing. There's no other films that really do this. So yeah, from that point of view, incredibly impressive. Obviously, incredibly light on story, which is kind of to be expected. It is the enemy in it is literally just an unnamed enemy, as I suppose a way to sell it as many markets.
Quite a lot of heavy lifting is done by words like the enemy or the combatant or the whatever adjective they want to use to describe the baddie. Like, they don't want to annoy any one country because they know that a big chunk of box office could come from that country.
Except that they really annoyed China by having him have Maverick having a jacket on with the Taiwan flag on it at some point, but that's by the by. After it's a lot of effort to go through to not annoy someone,
and in the end, it sort of doesn't really matter because China and Russia have both closed up shop to American movies for the most part, about 90% of which, because they really are clamping down. They're not letting most of the Marvel movies through. I'm not sure if they let.
I don't think Russia. Through. I think it's not out of choice, but
it's not out of choice. That's true, but because of everything going on with the war in Ukraine, it's unfortunate, but it is true that those two countries have sort of clamped down for various reasons. China by choice, Russia by not, because those were two big box office things. And the only reason why decisions like this are made, the combatant is holding uranium in the space, which is sort of the nuts and bolts of the why they're there. The only reason they make choices like that is because the global market is such a big thing that they don't want to annoy someone. But they could have just called it Russia because they didn't know. But unfortunately, or China. But still, here we are. And it is a little bit of a dent in the movie that they can't just say, like in the first movie, the Russians are holding the uranium and it will do the thing if it goes off.
My kind of thinking was, you still, whether you're going to sell films or not to China and Russia maybe less so at the moment, but in reason, these days in a globalised economy, you're still meant to be relatively friendly with other countries. You're not meant to start stabbing them in the back anyway. So I understand the decision and why they've done it. It's not the Cold War anymore. But there are countries like North Korea and things which are still massive outliers, and I don't think would really offend anyone by saying North Korea. It's
North Korea, okay? It's North Korea. No one's going to get annoyed about that.
Now, does it detract from the film? No. But what it does kind of do is lead very much into the one major criticism I have of it, is that it is quite bland. It is a bland film. It is like, it's I don't want to say lowest common denominator because
it's made expertly well.
It's done so well, and it's really engaging, and I really enjoyed it. But it doesn't have any. The humour's very bland. It's just occasional quip from someone here and there. The script is very bland. Like you say, it's all the 2-syllable things, and
again, that's done to sort of like the global market. Exactly. 1-syllable dialogue. We can't do this mission. Yes, we can do this mission.
And also, even things like, yes, I think it's set in California, the majority of it. That looks very beautiful, nice beach town, blah, blah, blah. But when they go to, I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that they go to another country at some point in there to go and blow a thing up.
To do the mission.
Yeah. And that is... again, very bland. Like, it could be anywhere. Is it France? Is it Asia? Is it
And all we
North
know
Africa?
from the landscape is that it's snowy, a lot of pine trees. So it could be in Canada.
Yeah, exactly. For all you know, it is.
Damn Canadians have gone too far.
I know, they've gone rogue, nuclear state. That Trudeau. But yeah, it just is very bland. And the same thing, the romance in it's very bland. It's very PG. It's very by the book. Oh, we better have this in here. Let's just do montages of people smiling at each other and hugging, and again, no dialogue, and that's the one thing. So obviously the fighter jet scenes is absolutely amazing, but everything around it is just so bland and simple, and
it's like you can see the cogs all
the
fitting into one of the accountants with their charts going, if you put that thing there and that thing there, this thing will come.
And it's a criticism I have had of some, not all, but some Marvel movies as well. And it kind of is that, it's more so, and okay, they're all a business and they're there to make money, but you can still throw a little bit of charm in, or a character actor here and then. You go, okay, Miles Teller's in it because he's a character actor, whatever. But you know,
throw a little edge in.
Yeah, a little bit of fun, a little bit of like. And it's not going to alienate masses of audiences.
I have to say I'm kind of the same, because the first time I saw it, I was just sort of blown away by, whoa, the planes, whoa, just, wow, doing the thing. The second time, I still was enjoying that. I wasn't watching it for a second time out of choice. It was just like, that was the available movie for a foreign language student. That's the movie that works. And I was still enjoying the planes, but I found myself just thinking, this is the blockbuster. It's, everything about it is retrofitted to work. In fact, even my choice of saying, well, we should see Top Gun Maverick over Jurassic World is kind of me admitting to the film's own cynicism. That, it's been retrofitted to be a global market film. Like, second, third language doesn't matter. The English is so simple, a child could understand it.
And it made $1 billion, and it was 36 years from the original film.
$1.4 billion.
Yeah, so I think I'm right in saying it's bigger than Spider-Man, whatever the newest one's called, because they all have annoying names.
I don't want to say yes or no to that, because we'll end up saying yes, it is, and Spider-Man will have earned 30 million more.
It's in the same range.
It's in the same range.
But its last sequel was 30 odd years ago, and it's not a comic book movie, and Tom Holland, I would say at the moment, is probably a bigger star than Tom Cruise when it comes to
overall, I think
marketability.
Tom Cruise is, if you put him in an action film, he is granddaddy.
He's Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
But
I think you could put Tom Holland in a romance and it would sell quite well.
I think if you kind of were to put Tom Holland in 10 random movies and you were to put Tom Cruise in 10 random movies at the minute over the next 2 years, and divide the takings, the likelihood is the Tom Holland movies will make more money.
And across several genres as well, where Tom Cruise action sell very well. Yeah. Everything else, like he used to in the 90s and the 80s, films like Jerry Maguire were only big hits because someone like Tom Cruise was
exactly. But that's it. He's not his young self anymore.
Exactly.
He's the stunts guy. He's the guy that does all these crazy stunts himself, and it looks really
realistic.
That's
his reputation, and he knows that. Yeah. That's why he's only making films like Top Gun or Mission Impossible.
And he is so good at it.
Yes,
as well.
Absolutely.
Fair play to the guy. Like, I think as everyone did, maybe people got a bit tired of him in the mid-2000s when he was jumping on sofas and things, and then I wouldn't say reinvented himself because he always did these things, but he kind of threw everything else away and said, this is the guy I'm going to become. And you know what? Fair play to him. He's done it well. And
absolutely.
But I think the point I was trying to make anyway is that for a film that's based on a 36-year-old movie with I don't want to say washed up, but someone who's maybe past his prime as a peak film star, in a world where two of your biggest markets are closed down, in a post-COVID world as well, where cinemas are struggling somewhat compared to what they were pre-COVID, to make $1.4 billion is pretty impressive.
It's huge, and it's his first $1 billion film, and I think it was his first film to gross over $100 million in its opening weekend. Because he's usually the kind of guy that does the 50, 60, sometimes 70 or 80. Yeah, his films
have legs because people go, actually, he's done some really cool stunts. You should go and see him.
And especially because he's a guy that attracts older audiences that are aging with him, which, is not as condescending as I wanted it to sound, but it's sort of true. They're not the type of audience that rushes out on the opening weekend. They're the type of audience that some will see it opening weekend, some will wait until the second weekend or a midweek when they get a moment free from work, for example, or a moment free from the kids. And that's why he's not usually a $100 billion sort of guy. Just to highlight some things that I did think works. It's no secret that Val Kilmer is in the movie because he's in the trailer. And a lot of people know this because there was a documentary about it, and his film choices as of late have shown this. He had cancer, and his scene was genuinely moving. So it's a scene where he gives Tom Cruise some Iceman gives Tom Cruise some advice, and you can't not think about Val and his life and his career and how he was a movie star that was similarly big in the 80s and 90s, and then that got cut short because of partly his own decisions as being a bit of a rambunctious, young, hot-headed youth, but also now because of his cancer, he hasn't been allowed to have the comeback that Tom Cruise kind of did in that same period, and it was very heartbreaking to see him like that. I also want to point out that Jennifer Connelly is the woman that he's paired with in this sort of by-the-numbers romance. I think this is the first time Tom Cruise has been, because he's usually paired with women past his 30s who are in, at most, their mid to late 30s. And this is the first time Tom Cruise has been paired with a woman in her 50s. And, Leonardo DiCaprio would crap himself at something like that. But here we are. And there
25.
Yes, exactly. There were jokes when Don't Look Up came out because he has romantic scenes with Kate Blanchett. And people were joking. It's like, you can tell this is his most daring acting yet, to date a woman in her 50s. Wow. And I feel like, Tom Cruise has had a similar problem in films. He doesn't seem quite so forced here. He seems to be having a fun time. They have good enough chemistry. But I think the young actors in this film were the real highlight for me. I think Miles Teller is a kind of emerging sort of character actor type. He had this rambunctious movie star period where he was one of the bad boys of Hollywood. But he seems to have really calmed down now in interviews recently. He seems kind of quite calm and, kind of easygoing, and he seems to be moving into that.
Being a 20-year-old and a 30-year-old,
Exactly.
We've all been there.
We've all had that period. But I think my favourite of the cast members by far is a guy called Glenn Powell, who plays this sort of rival young hothead. He's kind of the Iceman to Maverick. This is he plays a character called Hangman, who's the rival to Rooster, who's Miles Teller's character. And I thought he was the one. He had the most fun. He chewed up the scenery in all the ways it needed to be chewed, and he is. I've thought this for a while, that Glenn Powell is an emerging character actor, and he's already worked with Richard Linklater once. He has another film with Richard Linklater coming out, as well as a couple of action movies. So I think he is moving into the action / character. He's got that Ethan Hawke, because Ethan Hawke worked a lot with Richard Linklater. I think he has that Ethan Hawke thing that could be happening. He's Richard's new young man of choice. I think that could be cool. We'll see a lot of interesting indie movies from him, and he's really good here. He's chewing the scenery, smirking and being a bully and all that kind of stuff. And he's really having fun. And he was my highlight for the scenes that he was in.
I also really, really always like John Hamm when he's doing that role that John Hamm always does, which is the person who, how should we say it? The authority figure who slightly falls out with the main character.
He does do that a lot.
It's that, or a kind of a weird comedy role is what John Hamm tends to do these days.
So it's kind of a film where watching the periphery and watching the supporting cast, in a way, had more charm to it than watching Tom Cruise do his thing. I mean, we've all seen Tom Cruise do the thing that he does, and he does it very well. But this time around, I was finding more pearls looking at the sidelines, looking at Miles Teller, Glenn Powell, John Hamm. Not so much Jennifer Connelly, whose job was only to smile and look pretty for Tom Cruise. But even she knows the routine. She knows what she's doing.
I actually really enjoyed Monica Barbaro as well, who I'd known from a TV series called Unreal, which is maybe not that many people watched it, but it was a kind of
I did watch that
behind the scenes,
very cool,
like fake behind the scenes of one of those kind of Bachelorette type shows in the States. And really enjoyed that. I thought that was so
that supporting cast, that young cast especially, they were really good to watch, and they're emerging very well, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It was, I think they were very entertaining. I think they did as much as they could do with the limited script and things they were given. I thought, the supporting cast and the people that came back from the original movie were also
very moving,
interesting. I agree with you on Val Kilmer. I thought it was a nice little nod. It was nice to include him. I kind of got the feeling as well that it was a bit of a... I actually get the feeling that Tom Cruise possibly is quite a nice guy. Is in my heart of hearts feel.
He has long working relationships.
He does, and I think from that point of view, I think what I could see was, so the opening credits said produced by Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer. I mean, obviously Don Simpson's been dead for a good 20 years, so one would assume that means that his family are getting money, and one would assume that you wouldn't put the name of someone who died on a sequel to a movie normally. Certainly in that, maybe their production company, but not their name and things like that. So it also kind of felt like he was trying to give some money back to some people for a film which was one of the films that really made Tom Cruise famous originally.
It's probably the first huge one, because he'd been in big movies before and he was clearly going to be a movie star.
Yeah,
but that film was the one that kind of cemented him as being
that was the one, and the action movie star as well, because he's done a lot more like romantic comedies and things like that.
Yes, true.
In the past too. So no, it was,
and whatever Risky Business was.
Well, yeah. But yeah, it was kind of, if it is to him what Die Hard was to Bruce Willis.
Yes,
it's that kind of thing that really cemented his stardom, but also probably moved him into the area where he'd make his money. So no, it worked. It was good. I really enjoyed it. I think it was good.
And me too. And I will make another plea to please stop manhandling your microphone and kind of pushing it around and
It's
patting it and tapping it.
for me because I have to use the laptop because I'm also the producer on this podcast as well as
and the editor and the Mr. Extraordinaire.
Exactly. So he
has to do
find
7
that
jobs
I have to
at
do
once.
somewhat more. So because of that, you must forgive me occasionally for touching the microphone, but that
and
is
you must forgive
the
me because I'm
reason.
going to keep pointing it out.
Yeah, exactly.
For the comedy, for the lols,
Well, there's also seagulls now I can hear in the background.
Yes, well, hopefully they won't bleed into the mic, but if they do, we've mentioned it.
Absolutely, they were definitely in the mic. I can hear them. We are down in the coast of Kent down here.
This is a rinky-dink operation, so you have to forgive some of the kind of crinkling and crackling.
I actually think, compared to some of the big name podcasts I listen to,
everyone sounds like over Skype. Everything's perfect.
I know. Recordings over Skype, don't like them.
No, we're not fans.
Not allowed. But anyway, I feel that should move us on to our next movie. But before our next movie, we've got a little word from someone.
Ooh.
Hey, cats and kittens, this is Tom Waits, and I say you gotta listen to this cool new film podcast, double feature, with Callum and Johnny, with the whores and the longshoremen. Give me another whiskey, I got a long podcast ahead of me.
And thank you very much, Tom Waits. We've used Tom Waits already?
Oh, well, I'm not sure. Not to spoil the magic for anyone, but of course we recorded a bunch of these and we're going to run out of them quite fast. So we're going to have to come up either with a new gimmick or more impressions. So if anyone has any ideas for who they want us to do impressions of, please email those in, send those in, however they do it in the 21st century.
Or even better, if anyone knows any celebrities who want to do some voiceovers for our show, send them our way.
Yeah, send them forward. We love them. We love celebrities.
Also, I don't know what you mean, like they're the real people.
Oh, yes, sorry. No, it's not us. Yeah, it's the real deal.
Anyway, on to movie number 2. And movie number 2 is the also Jerry Bruckheimer, I want to say, classic.
It is, yes.
This is the link, if you hadn't got it, is Jerry Bruckheimer, this episode.
Jerry Bruckheimer action films
and that kind of thing. Movie from 1997, Con Air. Now, Con Air stars Nicolas Cage in the lead role with a host of high-profile and character actors in supporting roles.
Love it.
Massive. John Cusack plays probably the second lead, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So John Cusack is a US Marshal, and for those Brits out there that don't know, US Marshals are the people that move people between prisons. I think also catch people. I think the Marshal Service does as well.
I'm sure they do other things.
His job is to move people from prison to prison. And Nicolas Cage is one of the prisoners that he has to move. Nicolas Cage, unfortunately, his character just got out of the army. Was going to meet his wife, just got back from a tour of duty, I think in Iraq, I assume, looking at the footage at the start of the movie.
It's certainly deserty.
Yeah, somewhere like that, probably Iraq. And comes back from his tour of duty, goes to meet his wife in a bar, and some not so nice people are in said bar. His pregnant wife, I should say, as well. Some not so nice people are in this bar and don't like the fact that he's in the army, and then don't like the fact that he won't fight them. So they decide to attack him in the car park while he's walking back to the car. And in self-defense, he accidentally kills one of them. And as the judge says, because he's been in the army, he's considered a lethal weapon, just like Bruce Lee. They don't say the Bruce Lee bit.
They don't.
Which I'm not sure is a legal fact, but there we go. And he gets sent down for manslaughter for 6 to 10 years.
Yes.
And doesn't meet his daughter. Important part of the movie. So it's his day to get moved and to be released from prison after, I don't know, it doesn't actually say how many years, does it?
I think it's 7.
7, yeah, sounds about right. 7 long years. But he just so happens to be being moved on the day that they decide to open a brand new Supermax prison. Ooh! And in opening this Supermax prison, they've decided they need to move all of the worst, the scoundreliest character actors from all the other prisons in the world. In the States. And they need to all be on this plane with a set of not particularly great guards.
It seems like a design flaw.
And all these character actors, like Steve Buscemi, John Malkovich,
Ving Rhames.
Dave Chappelle, who I don't know if you would call a character actor, but I enjoyed him.
Absolutely wouldn't, but he's funny.
He is funny. He's playing Dave Chappelle, and many others. And all hell breaks loose. How do you like that synopsis? Does that work?
I think that's pretty good. I think that's a very good way of summarising it. It signposts just how ridiculous the plot is. Like, that's such a design flaw. Let's put all the worst of the worst of the worst, and let's put 3 guards on there. And let's also put those nice, sweet prisoners as well. So you have Nicolas Cage as the sweet father who was in for manslaughter, and it was a horrible tragedy, but it doesn't make him a bad guy. Along with his friend, he has a friend in prison who's diabetic. He's diabetic, and he needs his insulin, which becomes this big plot point. And they don't give him the insulin on the ride to the plane. They say, "Oh, we'll give you the injection once you're on." But of course, that's when all hell breaks loose. Along with some nice guards who aren't very good at their job, or they probably are pretty good at their jobs, but they're not prepared for dealing with. John
one
Malkovich.
of them is not very nice, to be fair. You don't mind so much when he gets his comeuppance.
Yes, he gets his comeuppance, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter just how ridiculous this film is. This film knows how ridiculous it is. It's directed by Simon West, who does a lot of these kinds of films. He also directed The Expendables 2, which is the best of The Expendables. Not that that's a particularly high bar, but he knows how to direct this genre, and he directs it so well.
And do you know his directorial debut?
This was his... Oh, my, I didn't know that.
That's what Wikipedia said to me earlier.
Oh, wow.
It is Wikipedia,
well, he clearly came out swinging. He knew how to make this movie without making it quite so self-indulgent as, say, Michael Bay or several of the other big 90s action movie directors. There aren't so many kind of lingering shots of women's bottoms or cars going, whoa, as Michael Bay would have. He just kind of gives you the meat and potatoes.
I actually, when watching it, it's quite hard to watch Joe Bruckheimer movie without thinking of Michael Bay.
Oh, exactly.
He's probably his prodigal son kind of thing, him and Tom Cruise between them. And I was kind of in my head comparing it as I was plodding through. And I think the movie, what this movie's strength is, so and this is stolen from Mark Commode somewhat, but what I kind of tend to think with Michael Bay is he does things. He's like, right, I need some actors to do the actory bits and a couple of character actors. Then people think it's a really good movie. And I need a couple of, I need a couple of set pieces. I need a soundtrack, and it's got to be rambunctious. I need some good looking women in there to do some shots. I need some explosions, and that's kind of how he thinks. Whereas when I was watching this, I was kind of thinking, okay, so they've taken the same core. We'll have some explosions,
and some character actors doing the fun things.
But actually, they've gone. We'll have more character actors. We'll give them more to do. We'll give them better scripts. We'll give them better lines. We'll have them interact with each other better.
It seems to enjoy putting these disparate crew of kind of sweaty villainy character actors together and putting them in the same. It's clearly enjoying the fact that it's got these people rather than Michael Bay, who's just has them there as a prop.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the character actor.
They are. That's it. And I think for all of these things, because of that, it's not bland. For the thing that I would level at. It's kind of scrappy, it feels, in a way. It has that kind of like all these scrappy character actors almost trying to outact each other, which is just great fun.
And reading the IMDb trivia, Danny Trejo said that they were all tough guy actors. They were actors who were known for being kind of big, muscly, tough guys. So it was a competition on the set. If one guy spat on the floor, the other guy had to spit further. If one guy had an arm wrestle, the other guy had to come in and show that he was a better arm wrestler. There was a lot of competition, but it sounds like it was all in the nature of good fun.
Yeah,
and what I really appreciated, like we were talking earlier about how the jokes in Top Gun were kind of bland, very by the numbers, quippy. The script was really enjoying the fact that it had some fun. It's all kind of done in the name of fun. The dialogue is very chewy and very
really
fun,
chewy.
And, especially John Malkovich, and it's knowing as well. So, for example, there's this whole subplot around a bunny, a plush kind of
the bunny in the box.
It has this a toy bunny that he's trying to give to his daughter for her birthday because he's going to be released on her birthday, and the bunny swaps hands between the villains, and there's one line where John Malkovich picks it up, puts a gun at its head, and says, "Stop moving, or the bunny gets it."
After he's just shot his
exactly.
friend.
And there's other bits of dialogue like where
you should have put the bunny back in the box after he's killed someone. Like, it's just genius.
There's other dialogue where the villains are interacting because they've got this plan to take over the plane, but they've got to wait until it's in the air. So they're not laying all their cards on the table immediately. And John Malkovich is interacting with, I believe it's Danny Trejo, and he says, "You're a rapist, aren't you? There's no life form lower than a rapist. I equate you to the little white stuff that accumulates in the corner of your mouth when you get really thirsty." And it's like someone thought of that and had fun writing it down. And at no point does dialogue... I mean, it's all dumb, but it's not... There's a difference between dumb because it's stupid or dumb because it's by design. And this is dumb by design, but it's smartly laid out.
There's a couple of actually really well done parts in it. There's a part early on when Dave Chappelle's character's being used as human fodder, and the John Malkovich character says something I'm not going to say on the podcast, but something that negative against his race, and also suggesting that he is a drug addict, and in a much nastier term than I've just put it there. And afterwards, the Dave Chappelle character comes up and says, "Did you really mean what you said about that?" And the Dave Chappelle character at the time has a gun. The John Malkovich character takes the gun from him and says, "Yes." And just little things like that little kind of like taking the gun away before he says yes, and doing those little things, and then purposely like showing him taking the gun. There's just some really well done bits in that. Things that a Michael Bay would not get right. The problem with Michael Bay is it's like, what's funny in my films, I know, a robot pissing.
It's all very juvenile.
Yeah.
To the point where it seems younger humour than the film's rating. So these films are, to a teenage kind of crowd. Teenagers, maybe young adults enjoy an action movie. And then in a Michael Bay film, you'll have some jokes about poopy or piss. It's like, and that's for 4-year-olds.
Wee wee.
Exactly. And this film is, it's made some of the big, because Nicolas Cage is the king of the memes. And this film, like the one where he steps off the plane and his hair's blowing in the wind and he winks, that is one of the big memes, and it's from this movie. But it's not, the thing about Nicolas Cage is that his whole career is being knowingly weird. And this is no exception.
Which I would also like to say is John Cusack's career too.
Yes.
And it's kind of the fact, and they're both, John Cusack slightly from a nerdier point of view, kind of realistically have some action star in them. And it's kind of quite having the two sides of the coin, the kind of more clear-cut, maybe weird, witty action star and the weird action star. And kind of, and I quite like that kind of, that tandem between the two of them and having those two people. I think they're great leads.
And funnily enough, John Cusack hated this film.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me because he's quite like... he does pick some quite like,
but there's quite an irony in
dramas
it, because at the time he really cared about his career, so he made this film because it was going to pay him a lot of money, and he could fund whatever indie he was doing next. One of the films that he wrote, perhaps Grosse Pointe Blank. It's made around the same time, and he said, "I care about my film projects." The John Cusack of 1997 is a very different beast to the John Cusack of 2022. Yeah. Will appear in any straight-to-DVD movie.
He would kill for a...
If someone gave him a Con Air now, he would be running to it. Speaking of character actors, one that doesn't get mentioned as much because he's not one of the guys on the plane is Cole Meany, who plays the DEA agent who has a lot of sparring matches with John Cusack.
And again, they have some great dialogue between each other. Some great little quips, some great little moments. And yeah, I do love him, actually. I think he's a great actor. He was in a film a couple of years ago where he played Jerry Adams, called The Journey, about the kind of the 97 peace process in Ireland. And it was, he's an excellent actor. Anytime he turns up in anything, he's great fun.
Yes. And this is the kind of film where there'd be no wrong answer to who's your favourite character actor in this film. One person might say Cole Meany, one person might say John Cusack, one person might say John Malkovich, and there is no wrong one.
Even outside, like, he doesn't have a huge amount to do, but even Steve Buscemi's character is incredibly menacing and horrible, followed by a couple of great comic moments with him as well.
Yeah,
particularly the post-credits scene.
It's a strange character, of course. We spoil these movies. He plays a paedophile and
slash murderer.
He was wearing the little girl's head like a hat, driving across state lines with it, and that's one of his pieces of dialogue. So he is incredibly creepy.
But also, he's the one person who seems to sneak out the back and everyone forgets about. And there's a great post-movie scene of him at a roulette table in Vegas. The movie ends in Vegas. The person says, "Are you feeling lucky?" And it just pans up to him, yes, and throws the dice. And then it cuts to him winning, I think, doesn't it? And yeah. It's great character actors having fun with a silly script. And the one other thing that I just miss from movies is practical effects. If you made this movie now, it would look like bland CGI soup, the whole thing. Whereas this was all practical effects. I think there's a great videos online of them, the model that they used for the plane crashing into Las Vegas and things. Okay. And they just look so amazing. I love miniatures.
They really don't make them like this anymore. And I know that sounds like a kind of really boomery old man thing to say, but it is true that this kind of action movie is not around. I mean, someone like Nicolas Cage, he's a weird-looking guy. He's not handsome in the traditional sense, at least.
Well, what I was kind of thinking of the movies that it's closest to that come out now are the ones that seem to always have The Rock and Ryan Reynolds or The Rock and Kevin Hart on Netflix that cost about $100 million, have a silly plot, have kind of someone who's a bit comic and a bit weird is one of the leads, and then has some badly written jokes in it. But the difference is that the jokes are nowhere near as good. They don't land as well. I'm not saying the jokes in this are a masterpiece, but they just work quite well for the characters.
I found myself laughing a lot.
Yeah. I also would say that it's quite an ensemble cast as well, whereas they're not. They are those two leads with occasional someone will pop in for a scene here or there. And in a kind of more linear thing, they don't kind of pick up this. It's like there's always, it's almost like a comedy movie where there's a joke a minute, because it can just cut away to someone else. Like it'll cut away to Dave Chappelle and he'll say something funny, or it'll cut away to someone else and they'll say something funny.
I'd say the only person who kind of gets away with it today is someone like Jason Statham, who, while being huge, when is more of an ensemble man. He's someone that you put into a Fast and Furious pack, or into the pack of, whatever it might be. Mm. But every so often he does get a leading role. And it's decidedly more B-movie than the A-list movies that he's the ensemble of. And they're a bit weirder, but even those aren't quite as fun as this.
They're just all, I think, movies now, not all movies, but movies, that $100 million budget movie now is very formulaic. It's very
French. They're based on Marvel movies or DC Comics or a remake or a sequel. To have an original idea like a Con Air just doesn't really happen anymore.
Well, I don't necessarily think they're original ideas.
Well, it's not original.
Like when you look at Air Force One,
not original in the sense that.
But they are formulaic, and maybe I'm giving it too much rope, but they are formulaic in that it's a premise is set up, a thing happens, you introduce all the characters, a set piece happens, there's a bit more of a story, and then another set piece happens. and then there's usually a big set piece at the end, and that's that. You know, that's what they, and that was all Jerry Bruckheimer films and things. But what I think is different is in the 90s you used to get a lot of it's almost high concept.
Oh, they were high concept,
and you get a lot of these things. Like, think of all the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies from the 90s that were just ridiculously high concept, like Last Action Hero or any of them, basically.
They were allowed to be weirder in a way that they can't today.
And they didn't have to be connected to it. They didn't have to be part of a franchise. They didn't have to. Whereas now, is it part of a shared cinematic universe? Is it based on a TV series from the 60s? Is it based on, it has to be, no one is allowed to do an original idea, and then they just try and cram this other idea into a very basic box, and they'll get Ryan Reynolds because he's a bit funny and a bit action, or and I like Ryan Reynolds, I'm just going to put that out there, but just this from an accountant point of view, they'll get The Rock because he's The Rock,
and then they'll get a female lead into either Ana de Armas or Gal
Gadot,
one of them, but they're famous, but they couldn't, not yet at least, lead a movie that didn't have a franchise attached to it.
You might be lucky if you get one or two character actors thrown in for good measure, and then everyone
usually
else...
it's the boss or the chief.
And then everyone else... And then you might get like a celebrity that's a singer or something random that's put in there for a couple of scenes to spice things up. And whereas this is like, let's just get all of the character actors we can get. Let's just get two or big action guy and another person who's quite famous for the leading man. We'll have a bonkers script. We'll have loads of practical effects. And we'll have some good funny lines. And it'll be well edited and well put together. And it'll just be a fun roller coaster.
A very tight 2-hour running time. The only... not even necessarily a flaw, it's just where films of these high concept action films tend to come a little bit unstuck, and the same with Speed. For a film called Con Air, it's great when there are things happening surrounding the airplane, but once they land in Vegas and have the final showdown outside of the airplane, it starts to lose a little bit of its charm, I think. And the same with Speed, when they get off the bus, it loses a little bit of its charm.
But it's not long, is it? Like, how many films do you watch now and there's 3 endings?
Well, quite.
This one has the main ending, and then you kind of think it's ended, and they could have ended it. I can see a way they could have ended it a bit smoother, personally. But then there's a 5-minute bit that doesn't need to be there. It's fine.
5 to 10 minute final action douche 'em up. And that's the one where there's just one step too far.
My guess is that they had the script, and Jerry Bruckheimer probably went, we need one more explosion.
One more thing. Take it off the plane so that we can have a high production value. So do it surrounding Vegas. That would be cool.
Yeah, Vegas will look sick.
Yeah.
Man, it'll look awesome. It'll look sick. Let's go for that.
Big line of cocaine.
Exactly. And that was the 90s for you. So that is why movies in the 90s were better. I don't actually think that.
The damn kids with their Marvels and their TikToks and their MySpaces, they don't know how good they had it. And will they get off my lawn?
I know. But anyway, on that note, let's do some rounding up. So, Callum, what out of 10 and why would you give Top Gun Maverick?
I think if you would ask me the first time I saw it, I would have said an 8 out of 10 because I'm so mesmerised by those planes. I'm so mesmerised by the action. And I was like, whoa, you can see there's real. Whoa, when they take off, the plumes of sand going, whoa, those are actual planes. What? For the second and especially the third time, I found the creaks started to creep in a little bit. And it doesn't detract from the overall enjoyment of those actions, which still gave me that sense of, blimey, they did that in actual planes. Governor, whoa, what's planes? But the other stuff surrounding it that isn't about the kids, who I really enjoyed watching them interact. Kids, they're older than us.
I don't think they quite are, but they're about the same age.
32, 30, they're around the same age. If only we had muscles like Glenn Powell and the others.
I mean,
wouldn't that be wonderful?
This is an audio medium for all they know. We could have
ripped and shredded. But for that reason, I'm knocking a point off and taking it down to 7 out of 10.
Interesting. I'm going to be controversial. If it was just a film with like really sick plane scenes for 2 hours, it would be 9 out of 10. But I think everything around it is quite poor. And it also, poor is too
more standard.
standard.
Than
Yeah,
poor. It's not
And
nothing not expected.
that is my biggest cine crime. I'd rather someone shoot for the stars and come up with, which is probably why the score I'm going to give Con Air is quite high, probably higher than it deserves. But that's another. We'll come to that in a moment. And yeah, I so just to preface it, I absolutely adored the plane scenes. I think it really hung together well. But I thought there was, if you're going to do the stuff in between the plane scenes, so standard and so boring, and I did find myself kind of almost clock watching in some of those bits. Just don't have them. Just get rid of them.
Me too.
Just get rid of the love bit. Get rid of the Jennifer Connelly. Don't need it. Who cares? It's not well done. So I can't imagine that it's going to be get a new quadrant in. I can't imagine when we're going to go and watch it
because of Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah, they'll go and watch it because that's something they may enjoy, the whole film. But I can't imagine that's the thing that they're going to go and watch. So anyway, because of that, it's perfectly serviceable, and I enjoyed it, and it was a good 2 hours. But 6 out of 10.
Oh wow. Oh gosh, goodness! I can't even come up with a word.
Well, I've astounded you.
Should we move on to Con Air?
I think we should move on to Con Air.
Whiplash.
And so, Callum, thoughts on Con Air?
Oh, Con Air is just a joy. It really is, and I really do enjoy those movies. Even, frankly, some of the Michael Bay ones, like Armageddon or
I like The Rock.
The Rock, and that 90s oeuvre of action movie really does tick all my boxes. And I am a character actor obsessive, and Johnny knows this. That if a character actor is in a film, my toes will wiggle, my eye become ooh. So to see Ving and Steve Buscemi and Cole Meany and John Malkovich and all the gang, just kind of sparring with one another, that was just a joy. Only the tiniest of, not even a criticism, is that it's about 10 minutes. It ends 10 minutes after it should have ended. But I'm going to give it a very high rating. I forgot how much I did enjoy this film. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Well, high rating indeed. Yeah, I agree with you on all those things. I even have a soft spot for the first Transformers movie, which goes to show
the very first one is okay.
It hangs together. Although it does probably, it's only going to be a 6 out of 10. Not this. This is going to be much higher. The Transformers movie would probably say it'd be a 6 out of 10 because it has the same issues as Top Gun, but it's enjoyable. I like this kind of big dumb action movie. If you can get a few quips in there, and like Callum, if you can get some good character actors, it's great. And it's the perfect Sunday afternoon movie. I really, really love it. And I know it's not the greatest reviewed movie in the world, and I think some of that is. I know it's not a high art. It's not.
It has a 52 on Metacritic.
Yeah, I think 57 on IMDb on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think's mean. I think some people must just be snobs. I think it really
to some degree, yes.
But they've not watched The Favourite, and because they've not watched The Favourite, it doesn't deserve a 9 out of 10. But on this podcast, we don't care about these things.
We don't give a monkey's.
And I am also going to give it a 9 out of 10 because I bloody love it. I think it's great.
I loved it too. I love it when we come together.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that means that Top Gun has did you say 8 for Top Gun?
No, I said I would have given it an 8, but
7.
I knocked it down to a 7.
Okay, so somewhere between a 6 and a 7 because we're not allowed halves. And
I think for the roundup,
maybe
it's
a median average. Yeah,
so that's a
6.5. And for Top Gun for
Con
Air, that means 9 out of 10. So well done to you, Jerry Bruckheimer and team.
Well done indeed.
And that is the end of our show today. So I've been Johnny.
And I've been Johnny as well.
And cheery ho.